Bare rocks and arid country is still and lifeless. Not a bud, not a living creature. That is how the Negev appears to us. Acres and acres of arid wilderness and no trace of motion or of life. All is dry, parched, barren. Yet is it really as inhospitable and deserted as it seems at first glance? The long, scorching summer is over. The rains have come, soaking the parched earth, saturating its summer-long thirst, and the Negev throbs with new life. Spring is here, covering vast stretches of bare land with an iridescent carpet of flowers. More than 600 different kinds grow on the hills and in the desert plains. Israel's Negev is most striking in its versatility and contrasts. From Ein Gedi, evergreen and exuberant, you go down to the lowest and saltiest spot in the world, the Dead Sea. This water allows no life or growth, but the salt molds life forms of its own. The rocks of Ein Gedi are the home of Tristram's grackle. A straying enemy forces a warning call from this old handsome ibex and sends a flock of ibex males sweeping up the hill with amazing agility. Ein Gedi's nature reserve, an oasis of waterfalls in the midst of a scorching desert, cultivates its own fauna and flora. From David's Creek in Ein Gedi to the waterfalls of Galilee and the 4 cascades of the Tanur Reserve, torrents of water pour down the rocks and plunge into plains of quagmires. The swamp nurtures a different kind of vegetation, such as the graceful nufar and the water lily. The African Cyperus papyrus has come all the way from the African continent to grow here side by side with the indigenous vegetation of the north. Israel is a junction of contrasting and sundry fauna of remote origins. And so, while the African papyrus thrives in the marshes, the European coral peony blossoms on the hills. The tropical doom palm greets the northern plain. Out of 150 various species of iris growing in Israel alone, 8 are rare kinds of the southern Maria iris and the Galilean Lortiti iris. Israel is a meeting point of birds as well. Hundreds of them nest, roost, or traverse the country on their way to and from Europe and Africa. Storks are transient visitors in the spring and in the fall. The common tern, on the other hand, is a permanent resident, hatching and raising its nestlings here. So is the long, slim-legged, black-winged stilt. 4 eggs laid on the ground. What are they? Do they belong to the black-winged stilt, the spur-winged plover, the common tern? Whether kept in a nest on the ground, like the common tern's nestlings, or in a nest set among the bushes like the small reed warblers, or high up in the trees like the big fledglings of the purple heron, they all require constant care. The hatching colony of the cattle egret is all hustle and bustle, a typical marketplace. This is the eagle, soaring majestically to remote corners in search of daily food for its big, gluttonous offspring. At the end of the path is a steep, lofty cliff. There is a cave in this cliff, accessible to the eagle alone. It is here that the eagle builds its nest. The eagle soaring above, the Galilee rivulets flowing below. Along creeks, in groves and in cultivated areas, spring celebrates its victory in colorful display. Wherever you turn, you see the pink fluttering blossoms of the Judas tree blooming in profusion, whilst the rare white Madonna lily timidly peeks out among the rocks. Common flowers and rare flowers bloom side by side in profusion. Israel boasts of more than 3,000 different kinds. These brownish furry balls are the conies, creatures of rocks and caves. Just as the gazelles are creatures of high, spacious mountains, the coney, which originates in Africa, dwells in caves and is a distant relative of the elephant. Leaping, skipping and dashing, the Israel mountain gazelle feels equally at ease down in the meadows and up on the hills. The gazelle is said to be the swiftest creature on the earth, the turtle is said to be the slowest. This huge loggerhead frequents the shore once a year to fulfill its duty. Its function is to lay several dozen round white eggs and leave them where they are. The little loggerheads, once out of the shells, will scurry down to the salty sea, where they will live for the rest of their lives. Turtles come and turtles go, but the terns and the seagulls will always come back to keep the shore lively and animated. There is not a dull moment along the shores and around the natural ponds. Everything is constantly on the move, whether solitary, in couples, or in crowded swarms. The eternal murmur of life is heard everywhere, calling you to go out and explore the wonders and treasures of Israel's nature reserves.